It's round 2 of the playoffs. Do you need your lineup help? Probably not if you're already in the round 2 of the playoffs, but we're going to help you nonetheless. I've got Frank Ammirante from The Game Day joining us next on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Frank Ammirante. We are brought to you by the good folks at DraftKings Pick 6 and LIV Golf Fantasy. So thank you for your sponsorship there. It is the semifinals of most fantasy playoff leagues. Most leagues are, they had that first run last week, or maybe you just only have 4 and you start the playoffs this week, as the case in one of my long-standing leagues, old school style there. Frank, first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining us. You are very open about your process, your picks, your recommendations, your ranks. It's all up there on thegameday.com. You have a daily tracker and how you're doing. I love the openness that you have there, first of all. Tell me about your process when you're going about trying to figure out, okay, these are the player props I like for a week. These are the player ranks I like for a week. What's a normal week in the life of Frank go for?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to join you. But as for my process with betting, after I do my rankings for the week, I look at the matchups. I look at each team's implied total. So that's like, say, if the game's a 47-point total and a team's favored by 4, they're what? That's a 25 implied total for that team. So obviously, the higher is the better. Mm-hmm. You want to, if it's a running back, you're looking at how the run defense of the opposing team is. And then after I've done all the rankings, there's a good app that I'm just sharing it, no promotion. Like, I'm not affiliated at all, but it's called BetStamp. And you can look at that app and it'll compare props at different sports books. And then you want to find the best line. You're always shopping around for the best number, because let's face it, it's really hard to win as it is. So you want to put yourself in the best position to do so. So a good example of that is I'm looking at this week, Thursday Night Football, Chargers and Broncos. I'm looking at Kimani Vidal props. And I'm noticing that FanDuel's moved his rushing and receiving yards to 41.5. Everywhere else, it's 40.5. Now, it's only 1 yard, but how many times have you taken a bet and you only lose by 1 yard? And how infuriating is that? Yep. So it's just an added, tip in the process. You want to find the best line. And if you see one sports book like really really a discrepancy between the two, that's even better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say, unlike sides, unlike totals, like win totals and point totals for games, there's variance to be found in player props. And whether it's player props or whether it's projections on Prize Picks or Underdog or Sleeper or whatever, you can find up to 10 yards of variance at times, like for quarterbacks, for instance. You can middle some of those. You absolutely. RotoWire has a tool. The RotoWirePicks tool also scrapes that for like 8 or 9 different places. So highly recommend you people checking that out. Either with the app you use, or if you're a RotoWire subscriber that comes with, you can just download the app. And the app is free. If you're a RotoWire subscriber, you get access to everything there. If you just want to check out just the app itself, you can pay for that too. There's a lot of different ways. Highly recommend. But yeah, I think it's so important that you bring that out. There is wide variance there, and you got to get the best number. If you, especially, you're really strong. Like last week, one of the ones I'm going to highlight one I got right, because sometimes I highlight the ones I get wrong all the time. But Rico Dowdle, I was all over that stuff, and you could get a low number there as low as 82.5 rush yards. He ended up with 149, so it didn't matter. But there was like a 10-yard difference at various points. So I think it's really important to notice that.
Yeah, and that could even help, because I almost lost one last week. Brian Robinson had him over like 65.5. It was near the end of the game. He ran to 67 and then lost 3 yards. And how annoying is it if you lose by 1 yard just because they lost a yard on the last carry? So it just speaks to getting the best number, how important it is.
Absolutely. All right. It is week 16. It is the fantasy semifinals. And the quarterback position is an utter mess this week, Frank. I mean, we have like maybe 6 new quarterbacks this week. Rarely do you see it. I shouldn't say that. Rarely do you see it with contending teams. Do you see big changes like we see in Atlanta with the Falcons announcing last night that Michael Penix Jr. is taking over for Kirk Cousins? It's not a shock that they're making this move, but it's really weird to see for a team that's one game out of the division to see him switching away from their veteran high price guy that they just signed, but they had to make this move, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like Kirk Cousins was really holding this offense back. You could see that he's just not the same player. I blame, returning from the Achilles injury. I feel like next year, if he has an opportunity elsewhere, Cousins could, look more like himself as he's a year further removed from the injury. But yeah, the Falcons had to make this move to save their season, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So the follow-up question though is, okay, they made this move. Can we make this move? In a non-super flex league, are you even interested at all in Penix? How about in a super flex league? How high does he go?
Well, in non-super flex, I just can't do it. It's the semifinals. There's other options you could have, even if your starter, let's say, is someone like, Brock Purdy, who had a down week last week. It's too tough. It's too bold to start Penix, in my opinion, especially against the Giants, who there's a risk. The Giants really don't do much offensively. The Falcons could just run it with Bijan, sleepwalk to a win. Not a great game environment. But super flex, I ranked Penix around QB 25 in my first go round of it. You can maybe fire him up. Like, I have him over CJ Stroud, who's just been a consistent disappointment every week. It's hard to really trust CJ Stroud with what he's done. If you look at the game log, it's no ceiling there. Yeah. So in that case, yeah, I would probably put Penix as a bold move over Stroud. I do think I could see Penix, injecting life into this offense. I like taking his over. Penix is over on passing yards, which is around 220-ish and a half.
Yeah, well, I think they're going to do more play action than they've been doing, which is like none. They've been going out of the shotgun or the pistol or whatever. And, Cousins can't move, period. And I agree with you. It is the Achilles that's holding him back. I've got Penix at 23. I have Stroud at 20, so it's pretty close. In that same sort of vein, like, if I think Patrick Mahomes is going to play, fully practiced again today, but say if he wouldn't, where would you have Carson Wentz this week? Would you have Wentz higher or lower than Penix?
Honestly, I would go Penix there just because, it's not like the Chiefs offense the way it's been this year, more dink and dunk ball control. I just feel like I'd rather go with a flashy rookie than the veteran who's been a backup, even though, and plus, like, the Falcons have a bit of a better matchup versus the Giants. So I'd go with Penix in that case. And to be honest, because I update these ranks throughout the week, and I'll probably even move Penix a little higher than 25, closer to your range. Yeah. Now looking at it.
It's close, though. I mean, 23, 25. I mean, yeah, it's in the same bucket, if you will. Peter asks, this is a relevant question. And folks, we'll hit questions on the topics we're covering. We're like, say, we're talking quarterbacks right now. We'll take quarterback questions now. We'll take a few running back questions when we hit backs, et cetera, et cetera. But Peter says, Purdy, Stafford, Rush, or Penix? What's your lean?
For me, I lean Purdy just because of his season-long production, just considerably higher than Stafford. And then obviously Rush is a backup who hasn't started much, and it's Penix's first career start. Well, with that said, I will say RotoWire, great tool, defense versus position. That could be part of your process and starts. You look at Miami, they are allowing, I believe, the fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. But even with that said, I got to go with Purdy just because of what he's done this season. He's just been more consistent than the others on the list.
We're scarred from both of them from that Thursday night disaster.
Yeah.
I have a slight preference for Stafford, but he's all over the map. I get it. His offensive line is all over the map, but I like attacking the Jackson. And by the way, thanks for the plug on the defense versus position. You guys can check that out yourself for free. Check out the RotoWire. You get a free trial at RotoWire, free 2 days behind the paywall, no credit card required. RotoWire.com/pod. There we go. I can point now. And it is a great tool there. But it's a close call. Thanks for the question there, Peter. Appreciate you there on that. Let's talk about another situation in Seattle. That offensive line is horrific, terrible, no good, awful. And when Geno Smith got hurt, we saw how bad Sam Howell can be. Now, granted, I think the Packers are a pretty effective pass rush, but guess what? So do the Vikings. So the Vikings, especially under Brian Flores. There's no chance of Howell getting confused under that pass rush.
Oh, that would be ugly if hopefully Geno Smith could play, because we got to give credit to Geno after seeing what the offense looked like without him, like with that, like you said, the pass protection issues, and with Brian Flores' blitz-happy defense, the Vikings coming to town, to be real ugly if Howell starts. So hopefully Geno can go. Yeah. But yeah, if he doesn't though, Howell, no, not interested. even in Superflex.
We got a couple more. We got some questions in here, and we'll hit those up. But a couple other topics I want to hit real quick. Justin Herbert plays the Thursday night game. He's obviously not 100%. He was limping around. He missed a couple of plays in that loss to the Bucs. The Chargers' interior offensive line is not good. They're Seattle-esque in terms of their ability to protect the passer. They've got two good outside tackles, but the rest of that line, not so much. What is your outlook on Herbert for Thursday night against a really good pass rush in the Broncos?
Yeah, not very excited. Like you said, Herbert has been he's a bit banged up, and he's also been a little disappointing. Like last week in a good matchup on paper against the Bucs, only 14.8 fantasy points. His last 3 weeks he's been under 15 fantasy points. Like you said, tough matchup with the Broncos. This feels like, that classic Thursday nighter division game, low scoring, just not a lot of fantasy goodness through the air. Not high on Herbert this week at all.
Yeah, I'm not high on Bo Nix either after the canard he turned in against the Colts last week. That was early season Bo Nix. What happened there?
Yeah, that was surprising. It's not like the Colts defense is that good either. So maybe just one of those games for a rookie. But yeah, the shine is worn off a bit in terms of Bo Nix as a rookie in fantasy. So he's another underwhelming option. When I adjust my rankings, definitely got to, I wouldn't blame you if you took a shot on Penix over Bo Nix, even though I'm not going to rank it that way just because of what Bo Nix has done. But to your point, coming off a down week, it gives you the temptation to do so.
Yeah. And I kind of think that it's the NFL tends to remind us how hard it is on rookie quarterbacks. And we're like, oh, let's go to door number 3 because we haven't seen him before. But then we realize, okay, the speed of the NFL is so tough to adjust to. And we're seeing it with almost all the top rookie QBs. We get spoiled when we have a CJ Stroud season like last year. And then we see, oh, wait, the league adjusted him and now it's a lot tougher again. Now, I think that Houston adjusted to themselves and went out, tried to run a lot of 11, and that's not working very well. I think they were better off having a fullback and doing a lot more play action. But that's another story for another day. Let's hit one more topic and then we'll hit some questions real quick. DTR. I was flummoxed by this decision. I get it that, hey, Winston, they're losing with Winston. They have to decide, whether or not DTR could be part of their package next year. But man, we're kind of looking for this Winston versus Bengals matchup here.
Oh yeah. This would have been so good. Fantasy semifinals that every Bengals game turns into a shootout. It feels like Winston airing it out 40 plus times would have been great, but now with DTR starting, it really wipes the shine off the Browns passing game. I mean, just look at what he's done. He had to start last season where he had 43 attempts, only 165 yards. That's 3.8 yards per attempt.
Yeah.
It's just
not going to be pretty.
It's going to be quite ugly and disappointing, especially if you have Jerry Jeudy. Definitely a huge knock on his value with Winston benched.
William Watkins asks, Knicks, Drake May or Geno Smith, half-point PPR. Obviously, we don't know yet about Geno's status, but assuming Geno plays, who do you like of those 3?
For me, it's still Bo Nix. I know Drake May has shown us some flashes, but it's a little he's a little riskier given the supporting cast. And, we've seen a ceiling from Bo Nix this year, even though he had that bad week, like you said last week. He still has 4 games with 20 plus points. I know we did see the Chargers give up a lot of production to Baker Mayfield last week, so maybe they're starting to show some cracks in that armor in the defense. So I would lean Knicks there, but to be honest,
my answer too.
I wouldn't blame you if you said May though. The Bills defense hasn't been good lately if you wanted to roll the dice, but personally I go Knicks.
Yeah, just May in the cold in Buffalo. I just think a lot of bad things could happen there. Andrea asked, Tua or Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers had 2 cromulent games in a row. Are we buying?
I like Aaron Rodgers this week. Coming off a 30-point outing against the Jags. Now he plays the Rams. That game could turn into a shootout. So I actually have Aaron Rodgers at 13. Now, if Andrea meant Anthony Richardson,
wrong
it's possible. We can answer both. I like Rodgers a little more than Tua. Actually, to simplify it, I have Rodgers at QB 13, Richardson at QB 15 just because his rushing. We saw it last week. He had that rushing touchdown. And I have Tua at QB 16 just because the Niners defense is stronger against the pass, but they're very close for me. What do you think?
I actually got Richardson first there among the three.
Yeah, I could see.
Floor, and I think Tennessee's hot garbage. So that
Yeah.
might be the other thing there too. Kilkenny says Bo Nix or Caleb Williams.
Again, I'm going to just stick with Bo Nix because he feels more of a safer option. Caleb Williams, we just saw last week the floor that he has could be a 10-point type of fantasy outing. And, that bears off. The Lions defense is banged up and has struggled, but I'd still lean Nix there.
All right. We're going to talk running backs next. But first, quick note from our friends over at DraftKings and the Pick 6 app.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
We're moving on to running backs. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Frank Ammirante Jr. You can follow Frank on Twitter at FAmmiranteTFJ and catch him on thegameday.com. His ranks are up there. You can check them out for yourself. Let's talk a little bit about Joe Mixon. You mentioned him in your ranks as a guy that's on a slump. He actually got, aggravated that high ankle sprain in the win over the Dolphins, came back in there. They kind of downplayed it, but I got to say, I got some nervous energy going on here with Joe Mixon. What say you?
Yeah, definitely. And especially on top of that, now he faces a Chiefs run defense that ranks 5th in rush EPA. It's a stout defense. Banged up Joe Mixon. I mean, if you have him and you're in the semifinals, it's extremely tough to bench him. I'm a bit lower than Fantasy Pros consensus. I got Mixon at RB12. It's just so hard to put him too low, given what he's done this year. But to hedge it yourself, I would take Joe Mixon under rushing yards. I have that as one of the bets I was going to say today on the show.
Okay. What's it set at right now?
Let me just pull it up. I had it here. Joe Mixon rushing yards 59.5, and like against the Dolphins, he had only 20-ish yards, and then he had a good matchup the week prior to that in week 14. Where was it? Who did the Texans play that week? They had the bye. Sorry, week 13 before the bye. Mixon went off, but prior to that, Mixon had another down game. He's kind of hit a bit of a slump, as you said. So under 59.5 rushing yards, I like Joe Mixon. But as for fantasy, I'll rank him below consensus, but it's really hard not to start him.
Yeah, it is, especially when you lose Montgomery, probably Kamara. We lose Nick Chubb. It's tough out there right now. I'm going to share my tale of woe. I've been sharing it with everybody. I had the number 1 seed in the RotoWire Dynasty League that we did a startup on this year. My 2 backs were Kamara and Montgomery. So, hey, had the bye. Good news. Bad news, I have no running backs. I'm starting like Devin Singletary. Because it's the Dynasty League too, deep roster. So good luck. Like, okay, Craig Reynolds is out there. I'm going to put a bid on him, but it's not like he's going to take over the same sort of workload. Who are you looking at? Say, if you're trying to, pick up, say in a normal league where you have reasonable depth on the waiver wire, who are you looking to pick up this week?
Well, the number 1 would probably be Jerome Ford with Nick Chubb hurt, but he's probably rostered in a lot of leagues. So I'll dig a little deeper. We can go Kimani Vidal. Last week, he had 60% of the snaps. Gus Edwards was around 40%. And let's face it, Gus Edwards has not been effective this year at all. So that could be an option for sure. If we want to go a little deeper than that, I'm just going to pull up my rank. Kendre Miller, obviously, but again, he might be rostered. But if he's not, Kendre Miller is a great pickup with Alvin Kamara likely out. Maybe Amir Abdullah is out there with Sincere McCormick injured. You can grab him. And aside from that, maybe Cam Akers, he got a touchdown last week. You could hope something similar. The Vikings play with the lead, and then they just run it in again with Akers.
Yeah. Even and if you're in a little thinner league, as Arturo's in, he's trying to replace Montgomery, ETN, Bigsby, McMillan, Strange, Kendre Miller. Obviously, this is for a flex. You have a strong preference for one of those available to him there.
I think we should go Kendre Miller. He looked a little shifty. He was decent last week against the Commanders. You'll likely see the Saints try to run the ball, even though the problem is that, with Spencer Rattler under center, a good Green Bay defense, they may not score a lot of points. But I like having those guaranteed touches with the running back there. But if you wanted to go with a more ceiling boomer bust play, maybe Jalen McMillan. He scored 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Seems like he's really gaining rapport with Baker Mayfield. Classic case of a rookie coming off on strong at the end of his rookie season. So that'll be the riskier but more hot boomer bust play if you want to play it a little safer. Excuse me.
The other risk is that they play on Monday night, the Saints do. So say if Kamara experiences a medical miracle and is able to play, if you're riding with Kendre Miller, you may get 8 touches. That's the downside. But I have Miller in a lot of places. I'm kind of thinking, the Saints really should be thinking long-term. They've already extended Kamara, so he's not playing for a contract or anything. They should shut him down. What do they have to play for? But
good news, though, is McMillan at least plays Sunday night. So maybe you have clarity on it by Sunday night football.
That's a really good call there. Really good call.
So you can,
Yeah. I like that. You write it out to at least Sunday evening, so you got a chance there. Speaking of the Bucks, Bucky Irving, people are screaming at me that I have him too low. And my concern is the injury. We saw 2 weeks ago what happened with him. I understand that he gutted out over 100 yards against the Chargers, but is he going to be able to do that again? Second week on the row on turf. It's back injuries. I always feel like those scare me more when they're playing on turf. What say you?
Hey, that's a good point, because the worst thing you want to avoid is your player leaving early with injury. Like you said, that Bucky did a couple weeks ago, puts up 2 points, could kill you. I would still, start him. I still have Bucky Irving, right now I have him RB13. Maybe I could move it down a little bit behind Aaron Jones and then Charbonnet if Walker's out. But he just looks so good when he's on the field, 100 yards, 100 plus yards on the ground 2 of the last 3. But I do understand your concerns with risk of re-injury. But we got to give a credit to Rachaad White, who's been quietly quite productive as well. Yeah.
Even in getting goal line carries and converting them too. Yeah, absolutely. I have some Rachaad White in my life. Had to start him kind of necessary, and it's worked out pretty well. Yeah, should be a good matchup against Dallas. Chuba Hubbard's experience that last week notwithstanding. Hubbard was actually running the ball well early in that game before that game spiraled out of control. Carolina just committed so many turnovers, and the offensive line reverted and was just not protecting Bryce Young at all. To that end, are we a little shell-shocked with Hubbard, or are we going back to the well with him?
We got to go back to the well with Hubbard. That was really disappointing. I, like you and like many, thought that was going to be a nice Chuba game. The Panthers were rolling, and then they just laid a complete egg. But given what Chuba's done this year, and obviously, Jonathan Brooks always should get a lot of touches. Chuba Hubbard, we gotta ride with him. I got Chuba Hubbard actually RB11. He's against Arizona. They've been an improved defense, but I'm not, too scared off of them. You never know. The Panthers I could see them pulling off the upset, and then Chuba, gets it done. And plus, we saw against the Eagles, that was a tough matchup, and Chuba Hubbard still gave us it was 92 yards and a touchdown, 26 carries. We got to ride with him.
I agree. It's been mostly good. In some earlier in the season too, there are some other tough matchups where he contributed there. All right, we're going to talk wide receivers next, but first, note from our friends at LIV Golf. A new season of LIV Golf Fantasy is coming in 2025. New prizes, new ways to win, and more are coming in the new season. Get ready to play and sign up now at fantasy.livegolf.com. Thanks to LIV Golf for coming on board. I'm with Frank Ammirante. We are talking Week 16 playoffs. We're super excited about this. Let's move on to wide receivers, where there's no shortage of tough decisions to make. One decision that's not tough, though, however, is starting Brian Thomas Jr. I actually benched him in a league for Brian Robinson last week. I chose poorly, but it was Robinson against the Saints. Always want the extra touches. You never know if Mac Jones can support a good wideout. We've seen different routes being run by Brian Thomas Jr. lately, though.
Yeah, they've really, I saw a good stat. His first read target share has gone up since the bye. They're really not just using him as a deep threat. He's just the alpha dog there, and he looks like a complete stud. 76 plus receiving yards in 4 straight, 10 plus targets in 3 straight. You can get his prop over 70.5 receiving yards. I like that. It's a good matchup against the Raiders. You got to fire up Brian Thomas. He's firmly in the circle of trust right now. I got him receiver 11 this week.
Nice. Very nice. I have him in like 21, but that's not an insult. I'm not in a league where 21 isn't a starter. So, but I get it. Hey, bump him up in DFS if you feel so inclined, if you want to go that route there. It's not like the Raiders are for such a bad team, the Raiders aren't necessarily a great matchup. I mean, the Bengals tore them apart, but a lot of time, like last week, we saw they just blitzed the heck out of the Falcons. Falcons could do nothing about it. It really was Kirk Cousins that limited, and Mac Jones can be that limited. He's capable of being that limited is the problem.
Yeah, that is true. Mac Jones could always just kill this for us, but I get your concerns, but I'm just riding like what he's done the last couple of weeks, especially off the spike week last week. Brian Thomas. Yeah, I gotta stick with him, but I don't blame you for that bench. That would have been a tough call starting Brian Thomas over Robinson.
Right, the GM did a good job assembling talent. The coach just didn't put him in the right spot there, so we'll blame the coach version of me and not the GM. Tyreek Hill. It's been a really frustrating season. 2 weeks ago, we finally looked like hey, this guy, we might want to throw him the ball a little bit more. But the explosive plays haven't been there all season long, Frank. We saw week 1 where he had one big explosive play, like, oh, yes, this is who we drafted. He was quiet for a while, had the 80-plus yard play. Okay, this is what we're going to have this season. Hasn't worked out that way. And yes, there was a quarterback morass, but even after Tua came back, the big plays for Tyreek Hill are now 20 yards. Is he are his skills diminished at all? What's going on with Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, so he could be, I don't know. I have this suspicion he's maybe playing banged up a little, but
yeah, me too.
Like, it's not that I don't know. Maybe they're keeping it secret because not like there's been that much. Well, he had the wrist issue, but yeah, I think he's a bit banged up. And like you said, the explosive plays haven't been there. We got to see if Jalen Waddle could play, but if he might not play, that might just, make the offense even uglier. It's been a lot of checkdowns, like you said, and then Jonnu Smith. I'm tempering expectations on Tyreek Hill. It's hard not to. I think one of the flaws as a ranker for me is a guy with such a strong track record throughout his career, like Tyreek Hill. It's always hard to put him in the 20s just because of what you've seen from him throughout his career. But I wouldn't blame you if you rank him in the 20s this week. I will say a good shout. Speaking to your point of the explosive plays haven't been there. Tyreek Hill, his longest reception, almost every week, it's like 24.5. Yeah. And if you look at his game log, in his last 7 games or 6 games, 12 yards longest, 18, 20, 30, 21, 21. Consistently, the big plays haven't been there. So I do like that bet, taking Tyreek Hill under longest reception, as long as it's like 22.5 or something like that.
Yeah, he was just locked down by Derek Stingley Jr. last week. Did you see the game finishing interception where Stingley just ripped the ball from his arms? That was the one to me. Is like, oh, this is just not the same player right now.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, true. It's sad to see. I've got Hill at 18 in my ranks this week, so I did bench him 2 weeks ago, and that's the week he actually had. It was embarrassing, but I still managed to win despite that. But it was like one of those. I could have cost myself like a points-based playoff spot. It's just so tough. Another guy that's tough, guy coming off of a bagel. It's really tough psychologically to go back to the well. I'm talking Cooper Kupp. It could have been a Darnell Mooney comment as well. There's a couple high profile ones there, like lock certain fantasy starters that just dropped us this past week. What are you doing with Cooper Kupp this week?
Yeah, Kupp killed me last week in one of my leagues. Obviously it sucks with the donut, but now that's been like even in week 13, Cooper Kupp only had 3 catches for 17 yards. So 2 of the last 3 games been quite disappointing. Before, like when Puka Nacua just returned from injury, they were more neck and neck. Now it's a clear difference. Puka Nacua is just way more valuable in fantasy. Obviously, really hard to bench Cooper Kupp. The Jets aren't as like they're on paper. You always see at the Jets, oh, that might be a tough matchup. Not the case this year.
Right.
We saw what Brian Thomas did last week against this defense. I do think obviously it'll be continuing more Puka Nacua, but you got to fire up Kupp, although I have him around receiver 19 or 18 around there, just because of like I still have to put him not too low because we've seen what he can do this season. Even like in week 14, he had a solid week, but I'm tempering expectations to sum it up.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think you're right about that. I was asked by my colleague Jim Coventry today about JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Again, Seattle's passing game might be hampered. I'm assuming Geno plays with my rank of JSN. I still have him in like at 12 or 11, 12 or 13, but I could see the case. If it's not Geno, I'm going to put him down 20 spots. It's kind of going to get the like Jerry, just like Jerry Jeudy is going to get the DTR treatment in my next update. I think the same thing is true with JSN.
Yeah, absolutely. That often you'll likely see a lot of sacks with Sam Howell against the Vikings defense. It'll be a lot harder to trust JSN, who, credit to him, he's established himself as the top target for the Seahawks. What we wanted to see, like he's clearly been a better fantasy option than DK Metcalf for a while now. So hopefully Geno Smith can play. I think he will. I agree with you. And JSN, another bet player to look at in bets because he's consistently been around like 60 yards in props, and he's been really going over that number quite often lately. I'm just going to pull up quickly his game log. It's been 83, 82, 74, 77, 110, 180, 69 yards, and it's always his prop is around low 60s. So that's one to look for, Jackson Smith and Jigba receiving yards prop.
Herman asks, only joined now, who has a higher ceiling, Devontae Adams or Zay Flowers? Pretty easy one here, right?
Yeah, especially with what Devontae Adams did last week. Just blew up versus the Jags. It's not like the Rams are that tough of a matchup. He's rolling right now with Aaron Rodgers. Devontae Adams is. We talked about how Puka Nacua has really separated himself from Cooper Kupp. Devontae, in fantasy at least, has separated himself from Garrett Wilson. Like even before last week's explosion, previous week he had another 9 catches for 109 and a touchdown. He scored at least a touchdown in 3 straight games. He's got the higher ceiling for me, especially Flowers against the Steelers. That could be a low scoring game.
I kind of bought into the Marvin Harrison Jr. as a generational player hype talk in a couple of leagues. I got him in a couple of drafts. Hasn't worked out that way. I want to ask you, Frank, though, what are you going to do with Marvin Harrison Jr. next year? Like, because typically it used to be rookie receivers struggle. We have to wait till year 2. Sometimes it used to be year 3. Then we advanced it to year 2. And then we're like, oh, look at Chase Jefferson. Rookies, let's go. Yeah. This is a cold reality that it's not always this way. What are you doing with Harrison next year?
Well, I feel like the fantasy community will still be quite optimistic with Marvin Harrison Jr. He's still only 1 year removed from, like you said, being a generational prospect. I feel like he'll still go relatively high, not to the same degree, like in the second round. Maybe he'll go 4th or 5th round, and I'd still be a little concerned just because the play caller will still be there, Drew Petzing, and he uses him almost like that term that we like to say, sacrificial X, or like they're running these deep routes on the perimeter. They're not giving him and Harrison enough of a diverse route tree, and that is not so good for fantasy. And they love to run the ball in Arizona. They've been pounding James Conner. Who's to say we're really going to see a change in philosophy next year? And we could see, maybe improvement from what Harrison did this year. I don't know if it's going to warrant what his price tag will be, because I still think that luster of being that top prospect is still on him.
I don't know if they miss the playoffs, maybe then they'll have to reconsider their approach
True.
a little bit. I mean, Connor's awesome. Don't get me wrong. I love James Conner, but they were 6-4 coming out of the bye, and they've been putrid since. They won last week, and even then, I was kind of nonplussed by how they moved the ball against New England at times. Andrea asks, need two: Jennings, Thielen, McMillan. Who's the odd one out here?
This one is tough. Well, Juwan Jennings, we got to go with. We've seen his ceiling this week. He's clearly the top receiver for the 49ers, which is crazy to say with Deebo Samuel there. Like, if you told me that was going to be the case with a healthy Deebo, I'd be like, what? But Jennings is a pick. Adam Thielen has been rock solid, but last week with Jalen Coker back, he wasn't as productive, and Coker showed some upside, had over 100 yards.
That was one broken play, though, wasn't it? It was that 80-yard play.
Yeah.
And Leggett is going to be out. He's doubtful with that groin. That's the other thing about that there. It's a tough call. This is a really tough call because, Thielen's been a sneaky pickup for me. And McMillan's been awesome the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, it's like, oh, yes, McMillan's not in this picture. But now
I think because it's full PPR especially, I think we got to go Adam Thielen because he's been that reliable possession receiver. And Jalen McMillan, he can just give you, a donut, really. That's the floor. So I think you go Thielen.
I agree. So so we think that McMillan is the sit there. Thanks for the question, Andrea. Chris Myers starting in MH, Marvin Harrison Jr., MHJ, easy enough for me to say, or Devonta Smith. AJ Brown a little banged up. I think he'll play. It's his championship game this week as well. So interesting here. Who do you have, Smith or Harrison Jr.?
I think we got to go Devonta Smith after what he did last week. At least you're with a better offense with Philly. Like we said, Arizona's been what we thought would be an exciting offense. They've been quite vanilla and like this run-heavy team. And Harrison really hasn't gotten it done. I think you got to go Devonta Smith against the Commanders.
We'll take one more question before to go to tight ends. Jonathan Santiago asks, need three between Scary Terry, Ladd McConkey, Juwan Jennings, Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley. Need two sitters here between these five receivers. Tough call.
This is tough. Terry McLaurin, we definitely got to play, especially after the 2-touchdown game, and he's been quite consistent. Juwan Jennings, I think, will play as well. You never know that. Maybe the Dolphins offense gets going. That could turn into a shootout. 49ers, Dolphins, Jennings top receiving target. Okay, Ladd McConkey, if he's healthy, he's been quite good. He's really come on. I think we got to go with him too. Then it comes down.
Get Surtain.
I know, that's the thing. I know it's tough. I have Ladd a little higher than I would have. After him, I had put we have to sit two. So if I go by my current rankings, I would sit Allen and Ridley, but I may be swayed and I may adjust to put maybe Ridley over Ladd because at least
that's the way I'm leaning, by the way.
Because you're a Bengals fan. No, wait. No, they're not playing the Bengals. They're playing the Colts. No. Sorry. That was last week. They played the Colts, but still, at least with Will Levis bench, he's been struggling. That could maybe get Ridley going again. So that's the way I would lean if I did change. But for now, I go Ladd just because he's been more consistent.
It's just the state of the Titans when Mason Rudolph is your quote-unquote safe option. You got real issues there, but so be it there. We are brought to you by the Blue Wire Network. Here are their ads. Thank you very much if you're listening on the podcast. And if you were streaming live with us, you got a 5-second pause, and we appreciate you for that too. Let's talk tight ends, Frank. Let's talk about what's going on at the position there. And notably, Sam LaPorta getting tons of volume all of a sudden with the Lions defense, a shambles. They're going to have to play a lot more shootouts. He's going up my rankings now.
Yeah, definitely. Coming off his best game of the season, caught 7 of 10 targets, 111 yards. Week before that, he had 7 targets. Week before that, he had 2 touchdowns. Finally starting to deliver on that lofty ADP coming into the season. And like you said, injuries on defense for the Lions. Now with David Montgomery out, maybe they pass a little more than usual. Yep. I got Sam LaPorta right now as my tight end 5 for the week.
I think that's where I have him too. As a matter of fact, I have him exactly at 5. Yeah, 7 catches for 111 last week. Now, granted, they're playing catch up against the ultimate defense. By the way, this week is the ultimate test of like, have we really reached the point of no return on the Lions defense? The Bears offense in the first half, can they score and keep this? It's kind of crazy there, but because the Lions are playing like a USFL defense right now with all their injured players. They have so many street free agents, not just on the roster, but starting for them right now with all their injuries.
Yeah, it sucks to see with such a good team.
Horrible. It's horrible. And unless you're a Packers or Vikings or Eagles fan, in which case you're probably not too sad for it. But it is. I feel bad for Lions fans, especially. They've been waiting so long. They get this rocket ship of a team, and then just the fates intervene. Got a tight end question here. Mark Andrews or Jonnu Smith? Good problem to have. I'm going Jonnu because of the volume. What say you?
Yeah, I'm going Jonnu because of the volume. Like I saw someone tweet a stat. I think in the last, I don't know how many weeks, maybe 6 to 7 weeks, he's like tight end 3 or something. Jonnu has been, which is again like the Juwan Jennings comment. Crazy to say, like Jonnu's been the most reliable Dolphins pass catcher. I mean, aside from Devon Achane, compared to the receivers, how crazy is that? So what a season. But I digress. Give me Jonnu Smith there, the consistency and the volume.
I agree. Waddle might not play also, which means more volume too. So something to watch for there. If you're looking for a wide receiver to pick up, maybe you go ahead with Malik Washington, by the way, if Waddle doesn't play. It might be just if you're a desperation play, you're in a deep enough league for that to matter. Pat Freiermuth has been like the only real passing threat now that George Pickens has been out for the Steelers. We don't know if Pickens is going to be able to play. I didn't see the practice report on him yet today, but I know he didn't practice yesterday. He's missed the last 2 games, and we've seen what's happened to that Steelers offense without George Pickens.
Yeah, they've really struggled. Pat Freiermuth, he's been a little more reliable. He's got I have him tight end 10. I think he scored a touchdown in 3 straight. I'm just pulling that up. Yeah, so he's been that main red zone threat. And if you go back even further, he's got touchdowns in 4 of his last 6 games. It'll be it's not like it'll be an efficient game, but he's the best bet on the team to catch a receiving touchdown. I have Freiermuth, like I said, tight end 10.
Yep. I've got him at 8, so we're kind of in the same ballpark there. At 10, I have Brenton Strange with Evan Ingram out. Tons of targets for Strange last week there. He was the ultimate DFS floor play. He was basically the center square, free $2,500 player on DraftKings, basically. It was free 18 points if you wanted to take it there. Where do you have Brenton Strange this week against the Raiders?
Yeah, right now I have him tight end 13, but I think I got to move him a little higher to like 11 or so. Like you said, he just was peppered with those underneath targets that usually Evan Ingram gets. Mac Jones, we know, loves to, throw it underneath. You got to love that volume. So I'm with you on Brenton Strange for sure. If you needed help, like I'm sure most who have Kincaid or Kyle Pitts have moved on, but if you haven't and Brenton Strange is there, grab him and go with Strange.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kyle Pitts is like 22 for me.
Yeah. What a disaster.
So wrong. I bought into again. When someone says a player is a generational player, check your wallet. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
It's so disappointing on the case of Pitts. I mean, I don't know what happened to him because he was good his rookie year. Maybe physically those injuries just changed him. He's just not the same player. Doesn't have the same lower half anymore. Yeah. Seth asks a question here. Need to bench one in full PPR. Cooper Kupp, Kenneth Walker, Jerome Ford, Cortland Sutton. Obviously, Walker, it's a health issue. We'll find out about that. Assuming Walker plays, though, who's the odd man out?
It's tough because then you think to yourself, if Kenneth Walker's back, are they now going to have more of a committee with Zach Charbonnet? So that might make you tempted to start Jerome Ford. I mean, given what we've seen from Walker this year and his upside, his ability to take any run to the house, I think we got to go Walker there. If Jameis Winston was starting, maybe I would put Jerome Ford over Walker, but I'm going to go with Walker with DTR under center. And Cortland Sutton's been too consistent to bench. And Cooper Kupp, we've seen what he can do despite last week's donut. Yeah.
So. Exactly. So it's all health based. If Walker's like questionable game time decision, then it's an easy sit. And then otherwise I'm benching Ford is the way I'd lean on that one there. TS says, he needs one wide receiver and one flex from this bunch. Evans, Scary Terry, Mixon. Who's the odd man out?
I think we got to. You got a nice problem to have.
Yes.
I could see like the Bucks feeding Evans to get him to 1,000 yards, and he had a big game last week. Evans. Yeah, I think you got to bench Mixon because McLaurin's been so consistent, and like you said, Mixon's a bit banged up. He's been slumping lately. He's coming off a terrible game, and the Chiefs' run defense is very good. So I think we bench Mixon. And who are the tight ends? I think there was a tight end.
There's a tight end question there as well. Which tight end? Njoku, Freiermuth, or Strange? Njoku, we don't know status yet on the hammy. I know that Stefanski said on Monday they're hopeful he can play. Hope is nice, but it's not a plan, so I won't count on that yet. So I'm there. I go Freiermuth over Strange, and I think you're the same, right?
I think if Njoku plays, I think he's going to be the one Browns pass catcher that DTR like really funnels targets to. I saw a stat that I did see a stat. I think one of our on Twitter that I think Njoku had like 6+ targets in every DTR start. So he leans on him there. So I'm gonna go with Njoku. There might be a little unpopular given the injury concerns at quarterback, but just his upside, what he can do. We've seen from Njoku. I'm gonna go with him.
And obviously check the practice reports there. You can make sure if you didn't get your question answered live on the live stream, check out our rankings at RotoWire, rotowire.com/pod to get that free trial. Frank's got his own rankings. You can check that out. Check out Frank on Twitter. He tweets out everything there at F Ammirante TFJ. And you got F Ammirante TFJ. And Frank tweets out all of his articles at thegameday.com. Frank, awesome spending 45 minutes with you today. Thanks for coming on board, and good luck in your fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just quick thing, I will say, last DTR start, Njoku had 15 targets, so that could be a thing.
Yeah,
even though it's inefficient. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Good luck in the fantasy football playoffs, and always love coming on.
Yeah, glad to have you, and we'll see you at Tout Wars. Email coming on that soon, by the way. Thanks everybody for listening, and good luck in your fantasy playoffs. Take care.
Take care.